What's up, everybody? My name is Alex Bess. I'm the COO and co-founder here at Swolverine. This is the Swole Friends podcast, and today I'm joined by Paige Powers, a 3-time games athlete who is just 19 years old and who finished 25th at the 2022 CrossFit Games. Good morning, Paige. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good too. Super excited to have you and to just chat all things you and fitness and kind of share the world or with the world a little bit more about, who you are behind the scenes and outside of like the competition floor, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about you. Let's start at the very beginning. Where did you grow up? And did you ever think that you were going to be a CrossFit Games athlete at the age of 19?
So I grew up in Michigan. I pretty much spent my whole life there until I just recently moved to Tennessee this year. But I'd say throughout growing up, I never thought this is where I'd end up in life. Especially like at 19 years old, I didn't think I'd be doing this. I started off in gymnastics, pretty much did that my whole life until I was 14. And during that whole period, it was always like I wanted to be a collegiate gymnast. So that was kind of the goal until it kind of just wasn't. And then I shifted into CrossFit, and well, I guess here we are now. So
That's pretty awesome. And gymnastics is, definitely a really good foundation. I think that's a pretty common thing with CrossFit athletes, right? Is they start in gymnastics and then end up in CrossFit. How do you feel like it's been similar to, performing in gymnastics? And then how do you feel like it's been different?
I think it's pretty similar because at least for like what I'm doing, it's an individual sport, which gymnastics was as well. At least the team aspect of gymnastics, but for the most part, it's like wanting to do your best in every competition. So I think that kind of transferred over nicely to CrossFit since I'm doing the individual side of things for now. And I feel like it taught me how to have discipline, how to compete, how to be in the right mindset, which transferred over really nicely to CrossFit. And obviously, the gymnastics side of CrossFit came a little bit easier from having that background.
Definitely. And I think gymnastics, like you have to have so much composure and you have to have like showmanship almost in a way too, right? Like not just sportsmanship and not being, just good and colloquial with the other athletes. It's like carrying yourself, right?
Yeah.
What was it like to be on the games floor this year as, in the open division, as, a woman outside of the teams division? Was that similar to maybe some of the experiences you've had in the past, or was that like a whole new animal for you?
Honestly, it was completely different from what I've done in the past. The team division, I think it is like kind of on its way to growing right now. But whenever I was competing, we were kind of like shoved in like the age group pavilion. And it was probably just like our parents watching us and cheering us on. And so it was pretty surreal to be under like the lights of the Coliseum, especially, like North Park was packed and that was really cool. But I think it really hit me whenever I was in the Coliseum as like, I remember for the Echo Press event, I was like setting up my bikes and we had like a hot second before we started. And I just like looked around. I was like, whoa, like, I've been dreaming of competing in the open division since literally my first CrossFit Games when I was 15 years old. So it was really cool to kind of just like take that whole moment in, and like it was just packed. People were cheering, and yeah, I felt like super, super grateful to be there in that moment.
That's awesome. Did you feel nervous?
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of comes with like every competition. But it was kind of just like a nervous for like my performance. I don't think it like the setting of it impacted that much at all. I think since I'm just a competitor, like I want to do the best I can, and that's like what I'm always going to be nervous about is like my performance. But I think like being in that setting definitely fueled me to like do my best, and yeah.
Be able to like channel that energy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you have kind of other people that you've looked up to in the sport that maybe you were competing against or competing with, or like in the corral, like, oh my gosh, I'm next to this person? Or was it kind of at the point where, you've been competing long enough that, you're kind of like your biggest fan and that competition is competition? Or what is that like for you?
Yeah, it was like pretty weird. I think because I have been dreaming of like being competing in the open division for so long and like competing next to those girls, it didn't really hit until I was there. And I was like, I remember I've been friends with Tia for a couple years now. I met her at the 2020 Mayhem Classic, and like I competed against her there. But I was like 16 years old too, so it was no like pressure expectation. It was kind of just for fun. And then I remember being like, oh, like I'm actually competing against Tia and like all the other top athletes in the world. So that was pretty cool and pretty surreal. But yeah.
Yeah. When you decided to go to Mayhem, right? You trained with Mayhem in Tennessee, and you decided to do, I mean, how long have you been working with them on programming and coaching and that kind of thing?
As far as programming goes, about 3 years now.
Okay.
The first 2 years of doing the Mayhem athlete programming, I was in Michigan, and I was training with Rich's cousins up there. And so they're the ones that like introduced me to Mayhem, to the programming. And then between then and moving down here, I went and visited quite a bit, and then kind of finally decided to pull the plug. And I graduated high school. I was taking a gap year, which I'm still on. Um, but it just was a perfect opportunity to come down to Tennessee. I didn't really have anything holding me back in Michigan. So I took that, and here I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, who are 19, they're getting ready to go off to college, or they're there, or they're starting their second year or whatever. And, here you are pursuing your ambition as an athlete. How do you find, or how do you navigate it, with your friends? Do you feel like it's come between you and your friends? Do you feel like it's brought you and your friends closer? Is it more so like you kind of picked up your life and went somewhere else, and now you have a new environment and new people you're around? And has that been difficult for you?
Yeah, so I guess like CrossFit did kind of hinder my friendships whenever I was in high school. I think me and my friends were just on separate paths, and it was kind of hard for them to understand like, hey, I can't hang out, every weekend because I'm training. And I don't think it really hindered our friendship. I think it just put a little like block of, hey, we can't be hanging out and socializing all the time. But luckily they're, super understanding of it. But moving down here, I feel like putting myself in an environment of people that are on the same path as me has helped build like friendship relationships so much. And I feel like the friends that I've become friends with down here are like lifelong friends. And I think we all have the same kind of like morals too, which helps a lot. And yeah, they're good people down here. So while I was leaving the group that I had in Michigan, I was also able to become a part of a family down here. So I'm super grateful for that.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like, are you pretty close to your family, or was that a hard transition for you? Do you talk to your parents often? Did you kind of just move and you're like, I'm doing my thing? Bye.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah. Honestly, like I absolutely love my family. I'm so close to them, and I do call them every day. But I also have been a super independent person all throughout growing up, and that's just kind of who I am. So moving down to Tennessee wasn't like a huge deal for me. I'm like, oh, like, I'll just see you in an 8.5 hour drive. It's not that bad. And like, I have my brother down here too, which helps. So I actually live with him, which is it was comforting to know that you know, if for some reason I couldn't like make friendships down here, or if I just wasn't liking it, I always had my brother. I had some blood here, which was nice. But yeah, it wasn't too hard of a decision for me to be like, all right, yeah, I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing now. But yeah.
Do you have one brother, or do you have other siblings as well?
I just have one brother.
Nice. Is he older or younger than you? Older.
Yeah, he's older,
right?
2 years older.
I mean, unless you guys are like really close in age.
Yeah.
So I assume you guys have been pretty close like growing up, or is that kind of like a newer thing for you guys?
Yeah, it's we were really close growing up. At the same time, it was like we definitely had quite a bit of sibling rivalry. We got into quite a bit of fights throughout growing up. And then I think like right before he moved out here for college, we both kind of hit the maturity level where we're like, hey, like we're not going to be fighting every 5 seconds. Sure, he can still like wrestle me and slam me to the ground, which is annoying. I'm like, I'm doing CrossFit, and I mean he is too, but I'm like, I do it all day, every day. And you're still
way better than you at CrossFit.
Yeah. Like dang it, but yeah, but it's more like if we do get in a fight, it's more like we're mature about it, and we're not like, you know, running to mom or crying about it. But yeah, we're definitely like closer now in a more mature way, which is nice.
Yeah, it's funny how that evolution happens or doesn't happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's still like the little kids in us that like to just like pick at each other. But yeah, it's a little less of that and less like taking it personally. You know, like he'll say a stupid comment to me. I'm like, oh, whatever, you know, just brush it off my shoulder. I'll do the same to him. But it's not like, you know, World War III over it like it used to
be. Oh man, siblings, they're something else, right?
Yeah.
So how did you find CrossFit then, right? So you were a gymnast, you were doing that, you wanted to do that in college. You got to the games pretty quickly as a teen. So what's kind of that story look like? Who introduced you to it? You know, why did you like it?
So yeah, I was doing gymnastics, and I was just burnt out of it, phasing out. I had like my first like pretty big injury the season before I kind of decided that I was like done, pulled the plug on gymnastics. And a couple of my previous gymnast friends were doing CrossFit, and I had never heard of it. I had no clue what it was. But, you know, gymnastics is competitively obviously a pretty rigorous sport, and we were training multiple hours a day, every day. And to go from that to like nothing was really hard on me. So one of my friends, my friend that actually got me into it, Michaela, she went to the games that year, which was 2017. And just before she went, she was like, hey, like you should come try this CrossFit thing. And she messaged, or her mom messaged my mom, and, you know, we kind of got in touch that way. And my mom's like, hey, like,
just Friday at the gym today.
Yeah, she was like, hey, just go and try it. I mean, my whole family had no clue what this CrossFit thing was. And so my mom ended up dropping me off that summer to go and try it. And it was like, of course, like, I feel like this is just the vibe of a CrossFit gym. It was in a warehouse lot where, you know, you have like your marble like dealers or whatever.
Your mom's like, where are we going?
Yeah,
Where's
like
Michaela's mom taking me?
like, yeah, there's like abandoned cars, and she's like, my mom's like, where am I dropping off my 14-year-old daughter? Like,
yeah, lift some weights, right?
Yeah. And so I ended up just like trying it out, and I will say I was not a huge fan of it in the beginning. It kind of reminded me of like conditioning and gymnastics, which was my least favorite part of gymnastics probably. But then once like I kind of found out like what Michaela did at the CrossFit Games, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I was like, I didn't realize like competing in this sport was legit. And that kind of gave me the push to be like, all right, I'm going to the games the next year, which would be 2018.
That's exciting. I mean, it's pretty wild to be able to have the opportunity that you had. I mean, in your teens. I think that's one of the unique things about CrossFit is that it doesn't really matter your age, right? Like you go and I mean, I remember I've been to the games of watching age group games athletes and especially on the higher end, right? And I think a lot of people, you know, they get out of college and they played sports or they whatever and just kind of give up, right? And then they never really have this competitive drive again or are able to fuel that something that was a really big piece of their life, right? Like an injury ended your gymnastics career, but then you found something that challenged you in the same way. That was a different modality that brought out a lot of those same skills that you've developed over your life. Yeah. Right. So it's not like those just kind of fall by the wayside. That time went, you know, somewhere else and that's it, you know? What do you, so tell me more about this injury though, and have injuries been a part of your journey entirely, or was that mainly just like with gymnastics?
That was mainly just with gymnastics. So I dislocated my knee on the beam. And luckily
that sounds so painful.
What was that?
That sounds so painful.
Yeah. It was definitely like the most painful thing I have ever been through. Like I was super blessed that I mean, I know this sounds like stupid. It was an injury, but I was blessed for the fact that I didn't tear anything, and I literally recovered within like 3 months of my injury. So that, I mean, not fully recovered, but you know, I was up and walking again within 3 months, which was great, and I was still able to compete my last season. But it was like the worst injury I had gone through. I had kind of, I guess, like normal aches and pains before. But I guess that's like normal for gymnasts where, you know, like I remember having shin splints and they were like so bad, like running down the vault runway. I was like, my shins, this is the day where my shins just snap. And, you know, it's kind of just like, those are the injuries where it's kind of just like, shut up and keep working. Unfortunately. But I think that's kind of just like whenever I was in the sport, that's kind of just how it was. But yeah, dislocating my knee was the biggest injury. And then since then, I've stayed pretty healthy. I've had like some random things like my ribs popping out, but you know, we got that under control. And I think I definitely like go about injury prevention in a much smarter way and doing like a ton of accessory and like proper warm-ups, which I'm not the best at, but I'm trying to get better at that. And just keeping my body healthy while I'm still young, because I know it's easy to just like, hey, I feel great, I'm just gonna, you know, pop in a squat and like hop in on this workout. But luckily I have a bunch of people in my corner that are like, no, do it the right way and you're gonna thank me later. So
well, that's good. I mean, that's kind of, it's like biohacking your fitness, right? And making sure that you're going to be an athlete with longevity, right? Not just an athlete for the now. And I think that's a really commonly overlooked thing, right? Is just powerhousing through things because you're 19 years old or you're 23 years old. I mean, it catches up to you and it's definitely different, you know, and it sucks. It just really does. So what else do you do to kind of like biohack your health or your performance or, you know, just kind of your overall life? Do you read books? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you, you know, what do you do?
Honestly, I'm well, not too big into reading books. I have devotionals, which like to read, and I guess the best book that's and the most popular book that's written, the Bible. I dive into that every night, which is actually as of recently. Kind of going off on another tangent here. I grew up as like a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been, I've had Christ in my whole life and I've known about him, but it wasn't until this year moving down and like the environment that I was put in where I really have grown to know him and want to know him more and learn about him. And so I started reading the Bible, which has been, some days I'm not feeling super motivated, but then those seem to be the days where the word really kind of like hits you, which is pretty cool. I've also gotten super into podcasts, which I also never used to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm super into the Sadie Robertson podcast, which is the Whoa, That's Good podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Really like that. But yeah, I think in my free time, for the most part, I kind of try and dive into my faith a bit more and grow into that.
Do you think that you were, that was reinforced by some other people at the gym and like that was kind of led, or was that kind of a personal discovery of yours or personal establishment and realizing like that was something that you needed?
A little bit of both. I think seeing like the people at the gym, like Rich, Bailey, Tyler, Gee, seeing their relationship with Christ and like how involved they were and how much they could lean and depend on him, made me realize that like, sure, I knew of Jesus, but I didn't actually know him. So it kind of led me into my own adventure of wanting to know more about him and more about like how I can serve him and fulfill his life for me. And they've been there along every step of the journey. Like it really like started with like small stuff, like watching The Chosen, which is it's a like show about documenting like Jesus' life and going through the Bible. And that was kind of the first time where I felt like a burning fire to like know more about him and like grow a relationship with him. And then also just like going to church. As I said earlier, like I was a Catholic growing up. I still am. But like Bailey, Tyler, and Gee, they all go to a non-denominational church here. It's called Life Church. And so I was like, hey, I'm just going to like give it a try, see if I can get a good message out of it. And I did. I ended up loving it. So, I kind of split my time between Catholic church here and that and just really using all the resources I can.
Totally. I think that their outside perception can be that there's this pretty big divide of athletes in the space or communities in the space, whether it's like programming or gyms. Do you feel like, have you kind of like, for lack of a better way of saying this, have you kind of gotten shit for that? Like, do you feel like people have been like, oh, well, she's very like into this and like, I'm not into that and I'm not going to do that? Or do you feel like that's kind of just an unspoken thing and it's more of a personal journey for athletes and like communities like that?
Yeah, I do think it's a little bit more of like a personal journey. I do think, surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded is obviously going to influence you, and hopefully it's for the better. But I haven't gotten like crap for it, which is nice.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, it's kind of like, I'm going to do me, you do you. And there's like no judgment, at least from my end. And I'd hope from others. But I do get like comments quite a bit where they're like, hey, is it like required that you go to Mayhem and like you have to be a Christian? And it's absolutely not that way. There's plenty of non-Christians that are down here that are doing just fine. We get along just well. But I think just like putting yourself around in that environment, it's kind of hard not to want it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And that's like with any gym or any programming, right? You have to be able to align your values with it and see purpose in it. Otherwise you're probably not going to get as good of results as you want. Right.
Yeah.
And it's very much a personal thing. So kind of moving into, what does the off season look like for you? I mean, what's training like now as compared to during season? Does that change or does it not? What's that look like?
Yeah, so it's kind of been a little bit crazy. I just got back from a 2-week trip from Italy where I competed on a team there with Rich, Tyler, and Bailey. So that was really fun. And then I also just competed this past weekend in Pensacola at Beach Brawl, Mayhem athlete program, that event. So I was like, hey, two days of fitness in the sun, that sounds right up my alley. So training's kind of been like a little odd. There's been like ebbs and flows, and kind of just like really listening to how my body feels right now. And I think like our main training group from games training, we've kind of all been off doing our own things. So it's like whenever we have people here, we're like, okay, we'll figure something out together. And if they're not, then I'll kind of just, do my own thing and, listen to how I'm feeling. But I think training's definitely like at low right now, so we can kind of all recover from the games and slowly build that back up. We just started a pretty gnarly squat cycle from Mayhem Burgener Strength. So try to get real strong this off season. And for me, I know I have to work on my running, so trying to put more of that in there between track workouts and air runner workouts, and kind of just working on my weaknesses right now.
Definitely. Have there been some hard days for you? Have there been dark days in training? Have there been dark seasons? I mean, what do you feel like has kind of helped you develop fortitude and face adversity and become resilient as an athlete? Like what are some of those emotional trials that you've been through?
Yeah, there definitely have been quite a few hard days. I think, like, especially for games training, that was the hardest training, hands down, that I have ever been through. And I'm not gonna lie, I did have like a mental breakdown on one of the weekends. It was a Saturday, and I was it's the end of the week, and my body was just absolutely exhausted. I couldn't get myself to like. I remember doing wall balls. I had to break up a set of 30 into like 4 or 5 sets. I mean, it was my body has never felt that way. But like having people here that have like gone through it before and have done it before, they're like, hey, it's okay. Like it's normal for you to feel like this. So that was really comforting because like I look up to them, and they've done it before, and for them to be there and be like, you're okay, like it's just a day, like you're allowed to take it, scale it back a little bit today, and go a little lighter, and you're gonna bounce back Monday, which ended up being true. So it's just nice to have them and know it. It's kind of like going day by day and just like leaving yesterday in the past, and like tomorrow just like not worrying about it, like focusing on yourself day by day, and kind of going in with that mentality, and just yeah.
Well, and even coming from you, who is a CrossFit Games athlete, you've been in the sport for a few years now. I think a lot of people hammer themselves into the ground, and they completely beat the shit out of themselves with training over and over. And then on the days that they don't do well, then it's like they beat themselves up mentally, emotionally. And, coming from you, I mean, you guys heard it. She said that I broke up my sets and I decided to take a step back. And I, thankfully had some people in my corner that encouraged that. But even Paige Powers takes a break. Like even Paige Powers breaks up sets and is not like sitting there being like, you're the worst athlete ever. You're never going to reach the games. You're never going to. And I mean, maybe, do you feel like you have like a kind of a negative internal dialogue at times, or do you feel like you kind of beat yourself up, and what do you do to combat that?
Yeah, I definitely can find myself having a negative attitude sometimes, and it's really like it's honestly super easy to, because whenever you have like a phenomenal training day, sure you like might feel good, but it's kind of like it's almost like just another day. But when you're having a bad day in training, it's like, oh my gosh, like I suck at this. I don't belong here. Like, you just kind of feel down, or at least for me personally. But it's like kind of having to take a step back and be like, okay, whoa, like, I made the CrossFit Games. Like, that's already, for one, like, so amazing. And like, I've, trained my butt off this whole year, and especially in the summer. So it's like, and you have to like, look back at, hey, I've had 95% good days, and like, this is just the 5% of the bad days.
Yeah.
So it's easy for those bad days to kind of weigh on you, but then it's like, that's a time where you have to like take a step back and like, honestly, for me, like focusing on things that I'm grateful for really help, because I'm like, it pulls me out of that negative attitude where it's like, okay, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, everything's still gonna be fine, I'm gonna be fine, and I'm still gonna be chasing my goal to train for the CrossFit Games and do good at the CrossFit Games. So
yeah. Do you journal?
Not much. I don't have like a journal routine. It's not something I do every night. But if something like, I'm actually a really big thinker. I love like taking times throughout the day, just like kind of randomly when I'm feeling it, to just like sit, no distractions, no phone, no noises, and just like think. And typically that's the times where I'm like, I'll think of something. I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm going to write that down for later, so I know it. And I also like journal during church. I like to write down notes. And so it's kind of just like, I'd like to get in like a normal routine of journaling. And I think I've heard very positive things about that. But yeah, that's kind of what I do for now.
Yeah, and that's definitely good, right? I mean, it seems like it's working, and I think it would be interesting to, kind of start, and you might do this already, like in your training book or your training app or whatever, but start to write down kind of some of the mindsets that you have as like 19-year-old Paige, that you can kind of look back as like 29-year-old Paige and be like, oh, baby
gosh.
Paige.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It'd be kind of fun, right? Like, oh my goodness, you remember when you said this, or you remember when you did this? And
yeah, for real.
It can be pretty fun. But
yeah, that's crazy for me to think about, like 10 years from now, where I'll be like, kind of like, I'm in the mindset of kind of like living day by day. Because I feel like I'm kind of, a lot of people, they expect me to like have a plan, like, hey, like, how long are you staying in Tennessee for? What, how long are you going to be doing CrossFit for? And it's like, I don't know, which I think it's okay for me to not know. And I mean, I totally respect their questions, because, I think that's something that I would ask too. But like, I feel like I'm kind of living in like the day by day and kind of just going by that, and just seeing where this fitness journey kind of takes me, and like living through God's plan for me. And it's like, I know that this is what he wants me to do right now, and as long as I stick to that, and whatever his plan is for me, that's what I'm going to follow. And just like thinking about 10 years from now, I'm like, my life could be completely different. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, and it's neat to have the mentors, the Tias, the Riches, the Brooks, you know what I mean? All these really forerunners of the sport, and you're hanging with them, right? Like, you guys grab food, you go to church, you train, you are building a life like alongside some of these people. Paige, I think what's interesting though is that, Rich didn't start when he was 15. Tia didn't really start when they were 16. Like, you are a part of this. I don't know where that came from. But you're kind of, this whole new generation, and people talk about it, right? Morning Chalk Up talks about it. Announcers talk about it. This next gen group that, you guys are starting younger and learning more faster, and, coming up in the ranks faster. Right. And so it's nice to be able to have someone to follow, but at the same time, you included are blazing your own path. Right.
Yeah. It is like, it is pretty crazy to think about that. Like to me, it's kind of just normal because like that's the group that I grew up with. You know, like Mal O'Brien, Emma Lawson, Olivia Sulek. You know, all of those girls I competed with. That was like just normal for us. And you know, I think Haley kind of paved the way for us to push for the like the adult division so soon, and she was the one that initially bridged that gap between the teenage division and the adult division. So I think that gave us all like a really good goal to kind of like chase towards. And you know, she set that like I guess not really a standard, but she let us know that it was possible. And now it's like now you have, you know, Mal O'Brien who competed at 17 years old, Emma Lawson who competed at 17, and I guess I'm kind of a part of that group too. So it's really cool for me to like look up to Haley and then also like look at the girls that are like a year younger than me or 2 years younger than me and see what they're doing too.
Yeah. And then also be able to like look in the mirror and be like, I've earned this. I deserve my spot on the floor. And that's like, oof, that gives me chills for you. It's a pretty exciting, unique thing.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think it's, you know, it's really awesome what they're doing, but, and it's really cool that, you know, Haley, Mel and Emma were able to crack that top 10 so soon. And it's like, it's easy to get into the mindset of like, oh, you know, like why wasn't I able to do that either? But it's like everybody's on their own path and their own journey. And, you know, I'm trying to find my way through. And that, like, I learned a lot this year. And, you know, 25th isn't exactly what I was hoping for, the result I was hoping for. But at the same time, it's like when you take a step back and you're like, oh, you know, like I was 25th in the world. Like I was so grateful to compete and like make it to the games that year too. And, you know, just use it for fire for next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely just learn from it, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to be happy where you are, even if it's not where you want to be.
Right.
Because then like, if you're not happy at 25th, what's the difference if you were 5th? Why is that not good enough? Because then it's always the next thing. If you're not happy at 5, then you're only going to be happy at 1. And it's like, really, are you only going to be happy at 1? If that's like just this pure 100% goal, or is it part of like process orientation rather than goal orientation? You know?
Yeah. I think like I kind of like learned that this past weekend too. Going to beach brawl, it was like I wanted to have a, you know, fun time competing, and I'd like to say I didn't really like care where I ended up at the end of the weekend, but you know, at the same time, I'm a competitor, and I'm always going to be a competitor. Like, and I wanted to place first, and so actually, like getting first, I realized like that's not what made me happy. It was the fact that like I stayed super tough on, we had like a squat, run, row, run, squat workout. And like, those are pretty much all big weaknesses for me. And it was like the fact that I never stopped running. Like there was so many times where I wanted to walk, but I didn't, you know, that made me happy. And then like for the last event, like a grip has been a like weakness for me in the past, and like for me to hang on for the sets that I wanted to, like that's what made me happy, you know. It like sure, getting first overall that weekend was cool, but it was so much more than just that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty cool, you know, earning your own self-respect along the journey and enjoying the process of becoming, you know.
Yeah.
I do have a question. So, who would win in a fist fight between you, Haley Adams, or Rebecca Greer?
Oh my goodness, that's actually really hard. You know, that's a really hard question because I feel like Haley has some sort of like scrappiness about her. Like I think I'd be scared to get in a fist fight with her. But I can also say the same thing about Annika, because she just has that like you know, she goes in with that attitude of like, hey, I'm gonna like annihilate you. And I think that would absolutely terrify me. Like, I feel like I'd be in the bad dream where like you're trying to like hit the bad guy and like run away from him, but you just like turn into mush and you can't. I
You like
think that's what happened.
land the punch.
Yeah, I think it'd be a tie between Haley and Annika.
I like that. Okay. Your first out on that one. Hopefully there's no fist fighting in the games next year. Whoever is going to program the games next year, please no fist fighting.
Yeah, please.
We want Paige to do well.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really funny. Yeah, it's interesting. Just how many people have different strengths, right? And you said it's almost like running your own race. Do you feel like with social media, it's easy to get into comparison? Like, are you very active on there? Do you comment very much? Do you kind of get into it with anyone? Or I guess those are two separate questions. Let's start with the comparison. Like, do you find yourself comparing yourself to other people or other athletes on social media?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really easy to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think social media can be used for such good purposes, but also like when you get into that comparison mindset, it's like, you know, comparison is the enemy. Like you don't want to have that. Like you want to focus on you and yourself and your journey. And I think social media just like brings, you know, like, oh, hey, you know, this girl hit a 245 clean. Like, why am I not there?
Mm-hmm.
But like when you take a step back and like realize like, you know, I'll find myself saying that, and that's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like that's not going to help me get there, you know? Like I have to do my own thing and focus on myself to get where I need to be.
Yeah, it's like kind of putting the blinders up, right?
Yeah.
And like we do a lot of nutrition coaching and like personal training and programming here at Swolverine, right? And with our younger athletes, especially my younger CrossFit athletes, it's the really hard thing to say, like, turn it off, right? Put it down, unfollow someone who makes you feel like crap, right?
Yeah.
And the same probably could be said for you, because there's also this element of like, I'm 19, this is a really big piece of my generation, and like how people stay in contact and how people like interact with one another and be a part of each other's lives. But it's kind of that same aspect and prioritization of recognizing what your goal is. And, you know, when you were in high school, being like, I can't go out every weekend. I'm sorry. But I'm also not sorry because this is truthful to me. I'll catch up another time. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Has that kind of been hard to you, or have you experienced that where you kind of internalize those things, like saying you're sorry, like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like, does that ever get to you? Does that ever bother you?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's like in the moment, not so much because I'm so like task oriented and goal oriented. But it's like taking a step back. Sometimes I'm like, or like looking back now, I'm like, you know, I wish sometimes I'd let myself go out, you know, just for like one weekend and like hang out with my friends and have fun. But at the same time, like, I think I'm super grateful for where I'm at today. And, you know, everything I did led me up to where I am today. And it's like, for me, it's like more than just CrossFit because CrossFit's just brought me so much. So it's kind of like looking at that and just, you know, like the past is in the past. And, you know, sure it would have been fun to hang out with my friends more often. And, you know, I probably could have and still ended up here, but, you know, I wouldn't change my journey if I could. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's good. And that probably comes from too having those, you know, little moments of silence with yourself throughout the day, or, you know, momentary check-ins where you're asking yourself, am I doing what I want? Is this how I want to feel? Is this correct? Like, being able to use that why or why not and use that for actionable insight about what you do next, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
What does your day-to-day nutrition look like? What do you do for yourself in that capacity? And how does that help you be the best that you can be?
So right now it's, I'm a little bit more relaxed. I'm kind of just like, I am tracking, I'm working with my, really good friend, Jess Hunsucker. and she helps me with my nutrition. And right now we're kind of just doing like more of like a range type thing. So it's like I can feel like I can, go to Buffalo Brew and grab an acai bowl and not feel like, oh, if I'm, plus or minus 15 grams of carbs, like, that used to get to me before, but like right now it's not really a time to, be super strict about it. So I can kind of feel more comfortable with like eating things that I want at sometimes. And yeah, kind of just, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you give yourself do you have favorite snacks or favorite foods or, something that's like really indulgent for you?
I am a big snack girl. Right now, the late July jalapeno lime tortilla chips, those are my favorite.
Those are bomb.
They're so good. And then, of course, they're always sold out whenever I go. So whenever I do find them, I have to like stock up.
You have like a whole cabinet just for chips.
Yeah, pretty much. And then also the mochi, mango mochi. I was just put onto those this year, and I'm not a huge fan of fruity ice cream flavors, but for some reason those just hit different. So that's kind of my indulgent snack whenever I want one.
I feel that. That's awesome. Mochis are super yummy.
Yeah, for sure. At first I wasn't like super sure about it. It was kind of like a weird texture, which I'm not a huge texture girl, but I don't know. It's just the flavor is so good.
I like them. I like the little green tea ones. Those are like my jam. The mango ones are pretty
good. I did try those, and I have to say they're not my fave.
Tastes like grass.
All. I was like, they sounded so good, and I took a bite. I was like, maybe I just need to cleanse the palate. And then I took another bite. I was like, no, I can't do it. Can't do it.
So you live with your brother, you train full-time, you're full-time, professional athlete, friendships hard to maintain. Do you have time for dating, or is that even something you've had the chance to think about, or is that kind of not a piece of life right now?
I guess I could find the time for dating if I wanted to. But at the same time, I'm somebody that when I do something, I don't do it half. Like I throw myself fully in. So like, especially during the season, I would have felt guilty if I did start like dating somebody and I just couldn't give them my full attention and I couldn't be fully present. But now it's kind of just like, if the Lord wants to give me somebody in my life right now, he will, and he's going to make that happen. And I'm kind of just trusting that. And, there's no rush for me. So,
yeah, as it should be. Absolutely. I think that's like a very great way of looking at it, personally. But do you, are you doing anything with Wodapalooza?
I think so. Yeah. I haven't fully decided exactly what I want to do. I know I want to go in some sort of capacity. I know I was talking with a couple friends about maybe doing team, and then, I'm thinking about doing it individually. I'm not sure if I want to do both in one weekend, but I'm kind of just going to listen to my mind, body, and spirit and see how we're feeling kind of going into it. And, yeah, just making sure I'm not burning myself out before the season even starts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's kind of that self-awareness and that, athlete mindset where, where do I push and where do I not? And where is it smart? And what's kind of like the bigger goal? Like, yes, this could be very fun, but could this put me in a position where like I'm compromised or compromise myself for the long-term goal? Right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Do you have specific goals, mindsets, mentalities, things you want to achieve during the 2023 season?
Yeah, I guess my goal is like solely on the 2023 games. Like, I guess I don't really care. Not that I don't care, but my main priority is on the 2023 games, and between now and then, kind of just setting myself up for success for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I lost you. I don't know.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on in my video. So everyone watching, I do apologize. But you can see
Okay.
beautiful Paige. Paige, you are you are running the show.
Awesome.
You're like, great. Not what I signed up for. No.
Okay. It's all good.
No, we're good though. But yeah, so I mean, so 2023 season goals, aspirations.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure that I have like a number goal right now.
Mhm.
But I think I'll kind of see that as the season goes on. And yeah, I just like to stay healthy, have another great season, and kind of see where the Lord's plan takes me.
I love that. I absolutely love that, Paige. Paige, it's been amazing talking with you. We really do appreciate it. Your insight, your mental fortitude, your focus on your goals is very admirable. We're very excited to see what you do in the 2023 season. Everyone who's listening or watching, make sure to give Paige a follow on Instagram. Her handle is _PAIGE_POWERS. So Paige Powers. Paige, good luck to you, to everyone out there as well. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Spotify. We are also on Twitch and Apple Podcasts. Every week, we're interviewing athletes and amazing humans just like Paige. On Thursdays, we go live at 9:30 in the morning. And Paige, good luck to you, and we'll be rooting for you from afar. Okay?
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yep.